Good morning and welcome to the BDTV Breakfast Show. This is the big story right here on the show. My name is Elizabeth Musa. Today we turn the spotlight on Africa's fast-changing startup scene and the quiet revolution happening in the world of funding. For years, global investors held the keys to growth, but now African venture capital firms are stepping up, writing bigger checks and proving they understand the terrain better than anyone else. From Moniepoint's unicorn milestone to clean energy and HR tech breakthroughs, local VCs are bringing more than money. They're bringing networks, policy influence, and a deep knowledge of the ground. Well, joining me this morning is Mukhtar Oladunmade. He is the Fintech and VC Correspondent for TechCabal, and he joins me to break down this conversation. Welcome to the show, Mukhtar.
Thanks for having me. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for joining. Well, let's start with the big picture, really. What, in your opinion, is driving this shift from foreign-led funding rounds to local venture capital firms taking the lead?
I think it's the maturity of the local venture ecosystem. Venture capital really took off like a decade from now, around 2015. So a lot of the young people that were working in VC at the time are now quite mature. They have their own funds and they're running their own funds by themselves. So a lot more funds are on the continent, and a lot more venture capital professionals have grown to the point where they now know the right things to do, and there's more funding flowing from the local VCs from that reason. Can you hear me?
Right, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay.
I can hear you.
It's like I said, it's okay. Yeah. Like I said, it's several things. It's the maturity of the professionals and the ecosystem as a whole. There's no ecosystem you see that most ecosystems around the world, like these ecosystems, in the beginning, they're helped by like foreign investors coming in, putting in money, hiring staff on the ground. But over time, it changes to like the local guys that have enough context. They know the right problems to solve. It's not just copy and paste from other places. And that's why you see like more local VC funds and VC fund managers are more active nowadays. It's just because they've just grown and there are more of them nowadays. So you see funds like We Capital here in Nigeria, ventures platform, Hook, you see Sahara, you see a lot of VC firms now are being run purely by Africans. Launch Africa, Lofty Inc. There's so many now that are just run by Africans. So that's what's happening basically. Like there are a lot more funds than they were before in the past, and if there are more funds and more fund managers, startup founders, more fund than not, at the early stage, we pick these guys because they understand the market better than foreign VCs.
All right. What are your thoughts on money? We understand that Moniepoint's unicorn raise was a major headline. How much of a turning point was that for the African VC landscape, in your opinion?
I don't think it's much of a turning point because Money Point round was, if you do follow like the ecosystem, was kind of expected. They had been raising the fund for like a year or a couple months before that. And because of the size of the business and like how large it was kind of expected that they would raise like a very large fund like that. I think what I can say would be a turning point is probably what I would say probably like the biggest turning point is probably the Paystack deal from 5 years ago. That was what drew a lot of attention to like the ecosystem that, oh, exits can happen. And it's exits that draw the attention of investors. No investor is excited by, oh, some large company, because Moniepoint is really large. I think that there's anybody that in Nigeria that, especially in like the urban centers, that probably hasn't come across Moniepoint. But like it's not the funding of big companies that attracts investors, the exits, that's investors getting money back. So you see that there's been a lot of acquisitions happening. There's been a lot of, especially in 2025, there are more acquisitions that happened this year than any other year. There's FX volatility that happened last year is kind of becoming more stable. Then there's exits that are happening more and more frequently because secondaries is now very, very a very big source of exits or returns for investors. Secondaries mean people selling shares in one company, one investor selling shares in one company to another investor. And that happened in the Moniepoint round. And I wrote about it for TechCabal. In this Moniepoint round, We Capital, a Nigerian VC firm, was able to return its entire first fund just by selling a part of its shares in Moniepoint. So, and by returning, it means that they were able to return at least 2x of their $4 million fund from just one investment in Moniepoint. So, if foreign investors or like other investors see that type of thing, they are encouraged to invest in more startups that.
Right. And from your line
I
of
hope what I'm
reporting,
saying makes
really,
sense.
were you saying something?
No. I said I hope what I'm saying makes sense.
Absolutely does make sense. From your line of reporting, what are some of the advantages that you think that local investors bring that foreign funds simply cannot bring?
So for the early stage startups, it's support. So an investor, a well-meaning investor that's in New York or in California can only just give you capital. Can cut it. To be fair, they can cut a bigger check than the local guys. But the local guys, like for example, I've been doing a lot of interviews with like local VCs, and they always talk about like the support they offer to young companies. A local investor is ready to follow you to regulators, ready to help you do business development, ready to help you get customers, ready to introduce you to experienced people that help you do the business. And there's so many examples of this. I think the two biggest examples that come to mind are probably We Capital and Ventures Platform that have like dedicated teams that just help young startups with any type of problem that they can help with. So that's one thing. The local guys also have a lot of context. The investor that's in Paris or is in London doesn't know that or would not have known about the opportunity of Moniepoint until it became like a very big one. It's only when you're here in Nigeria, you know that, oh, it's before POS became ubiquitous, it was hard to get cash. You won't know that if you're always in another country, except you're here. But it's context, it's support, and it's also just someone that just understands you, basically. So it's founders, or CEOs, they're human beings just like you and I. So like if you can talk to someone that understands you, it's just way easier. So I think that's some of the three things that local investors have over foreign investors.
Right. And I'm going to ask you about some of the things that you think are quite unique about the model that, early stage investors such as Microtraction, Future Africa, which happen to be changing the game, in my opinion. What do you think is unique about their model?
It's interesting that you mentioned Future Africa. So, and Microtraction. I know Microtraction offers small checks, but a lot of support.
Okay.
So, and Future Africa, I know about their incubator program, Accelerate Africa, which is also doing a lot of support. So Accelerate Africa helps, it's like under Future Africa. Accelerate Africa helps young companies get to $1 million in revenue. So it's like a program where they make sure that by the time you're done with the program, you should be close to or you've hit like $1 million in revenue. And that for any African business is very, very, I don't want to use the word life changing, but if you get $1 million in revenue, it kind of puts you on a very good pedestal and sets you up for success, just success. So these local investors, like I mentioned earlier, it's that they have the most context and the most support, and they more of like Microtraction now is led by people that have experience. Future Africa is led by Enya Boyeji. Everybody knows Enya and the work he has done with Flutterwave, Andela, and Move. Those are like three of, quite frankly, the most funded and biggest startups on the continent. So having someone like that on your side is also like a very big plus compared to like having someone, especially in the early stage. So this local and foreign investor thing is mostly skewed towards the local investors at the early stage. Because when it gets to the growth stage, like Moniepoint round now, the first round was mostly local investors. They had We Capital, they had Nova Star, they had I'm trying to remember one more firm. none is coming to my mind, but like they had local investors. But at the time when you're raising $110 million, most of the local funds quite frankly can't give you that. So you have to look outside. So it's at the early stage where local investors have the most leverage and have the most help or funding that they can offer. When it gets to the later stage where the companies are really growing big and they are doing like hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue, local startups at that point, local fund VCs at that point don't really have much effect.
Right. And we've been seeing a phrase going around where they say that Africa is not the Silicon Valley, but the tropical savannah. In your, how would you say founders should interpret this? And also talk to us about, what some of the main challenges that are holding back local VCs, despite the momentum that we are seeing currently.
Okay, I think I would answer the second question first. What is holding back local VCs? I think it's regulation is not really. I think the biggest thing. There's several reasons that we could spend like an hour talking about them, but I think the biggest reason, in my opinion, is regulation is not really supporting. And I'll explain. Regulation is not supporting the fact that in South Africa, there are laws that mandate pension funds to give capital to local fund managers. So there's a cap, obviously, like there's a cap because this venture capital investing is actually very risky. There's a cap on it, and there are guidelines and rules. Like it's a whole law. So like there's a lot of complications around it. But um here in Nigeria or like outside of South Africa, that doesn't really exist. So most of the time, you see local fund managers having to go to DFIs. That's people like IFC, World Bank, Propaco, BII to raise funding to invest here on the continent. And that is very difficult if you're a first-time fund manager. You don't really have enough experience or enough success stories to be able to sell yourself as a fund manager. So that's the biggest thing I think that is holding local VCs back. That there's not enough local capital. And it's also like HNIs too. A lot of HNIs are not really investing. And it's going to take a lot of time for that to become more common or more prominent. But in my opinion, that's the biggest thing that's holding back the local VC ecosystem. That there's a scarcity of local capital. What
Right.
was the first question?
And the first question was your reaction, or how you would say that founders should interpret the new phrases going around about Africa not just being is not just being the Silicon Valley, but being the tropical savannah. How founders should interpret this.
So it's funny that you would ask that. I recently wrote an article about this. I spoke to a couple investors, and what they say is, oh, founders should build for Africa. So it's different things according to say Uwem Akpan. He's the head of Investor Launch Africa, a Pan-African VC firm. He has like over 100 startups in his portfolios. It's according to him, it's like founders should build problems that are here on the continent, and they should have a scalable business model with clear path to revenue from day one. So that's what's in like the opinion of investors is that like you're solving problems for Africans by solving problems that are for Africans. You're not trying to like copy paste something that worked outside here, because you will notice that a lot of the successful companies that startups that became really successful is by doing things that no one else thought to do, but it's a real painkiller, or it's like a real pain for people that live here on the continent. So that's what I think it's mostly about. It's because VC is a very opinionated business. Every venture capital firm has its like own opinion, its own thesis, its own way of thinking. So, but like generally, what it means, what these founders want is that what the VCs want rather is that the founders to build to build solutions for problems that exist, problems that are big enough, and they should do it sensibly. Sensibly means that like not spending too much and trying to like keep your overhead as low as possible.
About a day ago, we reported here at BusinessDay from the technology desk. We reported about Africa, Nigeria actually, losing its throne on the venture capital map. I don't know what you think about this claim, really, because given the sharp decline from Nigeria's leading Africa's VC charts in 2021 to struggling in 2025, what does this shift actually mean for Nigeria's claim as the continent's startup powerhouse?
I think that's actually a very difficult question to answer because it would be unfair to call Nigeria just the powerhouse, although we have more unicorns than any other country, or like it's unfair because there are actually four big countries for like.
Tara, can you hear me? Hi, Mukhtar. Okay, let's take a quick break and be right back.
BusinessDay Foundation.
They say money
hosted the
never
AI
sleeps.
Summit in
Wake up
Lagos.
to clarity,
The team was
insight,
shaping
and the
Nigeria's
stories
AI
driving
future.
business in Nigeria and beyond. From the heartbeat of small and medium enterprises to the pulse of national economic policy, this is where business meets perspective. With expert guests, real-time analysis, and stories that matter to you. We go beyond headlines to bring you the full picture. Join us every morning as we break down the numbers, decode the policies, and spotlight the people shaping our economy. This is Business Money.
Attention business leaders. Want to make informed decisions? Join the ranks of the best with Premium Business Day. Access in-depth analysis and expert opinions to stay ahead. Subscribe now at premium.businessday.ng and unlock premium content. Plus, you get 50% off your first subscription. Don't miss out. Make smarter choices and seize new opportunities. Sign up now and elevate your business game. Visit premium.businessday.ng today.
Welcome back. Still the big story right here on the BDTV Breakfast Show. Just before we went on the break, I was speaking with Mukhtar Oladunmade, the Fintech and VC Correspondent at TechCabal, and he was talking to us about, the VC space right here in Nigeria. And I was asking just before we went on the break about what your take is about Nigeria. Firstly, maybe losing its throne on the VC in the African VC space. If you agree, that's really up to you. Because I was talking about the decline from Nigeria's, leading Africa's VC chart in 2021 to struggling in 2025, and what you think that this shift means for Nigeria's claim as the continent's startup powerhouse. And just before we went on the break, you were, answering and speaking to the fact that you don't know if we should actually stay where the continent's powerhouse. So let me just let you pick up from there.
Yeah, I was saying that we have four powerhouses actually, and it would be unfair to call only Nigeria a powerhouse. And we think about having four different powerhouses that sometimes you see that, to be fair, Nigeria does lead like a lot of the time, but like I don't think it's really a cause for alarm because it kind of fluctuates. Right now it's Egypt and South Africa that are kind of leading, and that's because they had some really big rounds this year. So there were some really big rounds in Morocco, in Egypt and South Africa that have made those two countries kind of like rise to the top this year, passing Nigeria. I'm sure last year, I think Nigeria led because of like the Moniepoint deal. There were a couple of other deals that were quite big. But what's happening now is that there's not enough companies here in Nigeria that are at the scale where they can raise a lot of funding. So it's that these companies now, they're like in Egypt and in South Africa. I wouldn't really call it a cause for concern or alarm right now, but if it does persist for like maybe a year more, then it can become like a cause, something that we should be concerned
So
about.
you don't
But
think
right
that
now, I
we've
think
lost our competitive edge yet?
I don't know. I don't think so. I'd say we're going too far to say we've lost our competitive edge.
All right. So why are we seeing, pension funds and sovereign wealth funds reluctant to get involved at the early stage? Why is this always happening?
So I think it's because there's no incentive. So like everything that happens in this, like in especially in like this part of the world has to like be incentive based. So why it's happening in, for example, in South Africa is, or like why you see the GCC funds trying to diversify is because, for example, let me take the GCC funds. That's like the Gulf region funds. So you see like a lot of Saudi Arabian firms invest in Saudi Arabian National Fund, Qatar, um, UAE, their national funds investing in American tech companies. And you see like a lot of the venture capital firms from those companies going now to those regions to raise money. And that's because they're trying to diversify from oil into tech. There's an incentive for them because they know that oil would soon no longer be like the gold that it is in the global economy. But here on this part of the world, there's no really incentive on the part of like local pension funds or like the sovereign wealth funds to invest or like pension funds. So we need to create that incentive. And the only way we can create that incentive is like through policy, through laws and stuff like that. There was an article I wrote so earlier in the year where I kind of tried to explain that, for example, in Ghana, if like there's a law that's created in Ghana that creates just 5% of that mandates just 5% of like the local pension, sorry, the local pension funds to invest in um what's it called, VC funds or like private equity funds, they just get $300 million over the course of 5 years. And for a country like Ghana that doesn't raise a lot of money from outside, it changes the entire um landscape of like their local private equity or VC industry. So I think we need to create incentives by ourselves where we're kind of like mandating these pension funds, sovereign wealth funds to invest, even if it's just like this little as 5% in like the local investment banking, private equity, VC, or like the local finance space, is going to change everything. So there's a lack of incentives, and we need to create those incentives.
And are you seeing us collaborating, I mean, the local venture capital firms and global fund, do you see us collaborating, or do you see us as rivals, or do you think collaboration is the way forward?
I think collaboration is the way forward because, to be frank, like I said, like at the later stages when a lot of capital is required, I don't think like the thinking behind, because the thinking behind local pension funds can, or like the capital that they can provide cannot really match what say a Propaco or a BII can fund realistically. So like I think at the early stage we need more like local capital. That's why I mentioned earlier in the year that one of the things that there's so many things holding back like Africa's local space, but like in my opinion, the biggest thing is like a lack of local capital, and it's also affecting like early stage companies now because like these if the VC funds can't raise money, they can't invest, and if startups can't also raise money from VCs, there's no business or like there's no value creation. So I think that basically it's more of collaboration. At the early stage, it's fine for like local capital to come in and help kickstart these companies, help them build companies. When it gets to like the stage where these companies need to like grow, these startups rather need to like grow and become like seriously large companies, I think capital requirements of that should kind of dictate that it should be foreign funds that bring that type of money.
And finally, just as I let you go, Mukhtar, which sectors or companies do you believe could be producing the next African unicorns? And do you think that local capital will be the driving force here?
I hope the local capital will be driving force, but I'm not really optimistic about it. I do hope that it's but I'm not really optimistic about it. And I think doing a sector thing is kind of tricky, but I'm sure that climate tech and that's climate tech solutions that have like impacts and like people pay for it here on the continent is most likely going to bring our next big what's it called? Our next big unicorn. But right now, I think the next unicorn out of Africa will probably be Move. So Move is the if you've ever entered what's it called? Those tiny, if you live in Lagos, those tiny Suzuki Uber cars.
Uber, yes.
It's Move that's financing those cars. So now they've taken that sort of financing and vehicle management system abroad. So they work with Waymo. Waymo is a Google company, and like they're helping them like run their cabs. Because Waymo is automated cabs, so they're helping them run their cabs in the US, and that's bringing lots of revenue. They're also doing something like that. They've just basically expanded all over the world, and I think that most likely they will be the next unicorn out of Africa.
All right. Thank you very much, Mukhtar Oladunmade, for joining us this morning, and even at short notice. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, this has been the big story right here on the BDTV Breakfast Show. My name is Elizabeth Musa. Keep watching BDTV.